I say we believe Sting's last match is this Sunday at AEW Revolution because in the world of professional wrestling, very similar to the world of rock music, there have been many farewell matches. There's been many farewell tours, right? A lot of people have had their last match. A lot of people have had their retirement match. A lot of people have had their swan song, their farewell, whatever it is, right? The Undertaker's farewell at Survivor Series 2020. Right? He had but he also had his last match, but then he also wrestled again. Shawn Michaels, we can't forget, WrestleMania, he went out on his back against The Undertaker, but it wasn't too long after he was back in the ring at, about 10 years later, back in the ring in Saudi Arabia. Don't forget about Ric Flair himself. He went out thanks to a retirement match at WrestleMania, had his last match just about 2 years ago at SummerSlam weekend in Nashville, Tennessee. So I wanted to take this time to talk about last matches and what they mean in the world of wrestling. What essentially do we recognize as last matches? What do we recognize? Because in wrestling, and just like anything in the world, right, we have the opportunity to look at something and say, that doesn't mean that to me, right? This is really their last thing. And I equate it to Michael Jordan in basketball, right? His last game in NBA was with the Washington Wizards, right? But is that what we're going to tell our kids was his last game? Or are we going to say his last game was in 1998 against the Utah Jazz where he hit the game-winning shot, right?
That's what it is. That's the easy answer.
Yeah, exactly. So I think the best way to describe people's last matches and stuff like that and how we want to recognize them in the world of in wrestling is look at it just similar to like regular people, right? People retire from their jobs. They retire from their full-time jobs. And then what are they doing a month later? They're working again, right? Yeah. So I look at it very similar to that. And I think as wrestling fans, that's a good way to look at some of these things, right? Ric Flair, right? He had his retirement match, and I'll look at that as his retirement match. So essentially everything following that he wrestled in was post-retirement, right? And then he had his last match, and then I'm going to look at if Ric Flair ever gets in the ring again as that he gets in the ring again. I'm going to look at the match in Nashville as his last match. I'm going to look at, what are you going to say about him participating or managing or getting, in a scrummish situation on Dynamite? I'm going to look at that like just post his last match. And it kind of makes you, say the same. With Shawn Michaels, I'm going to say the same thing in Saudi Arabia. Wasn't his last match. That was just a post-retirement appearance, right? I'm going to say his last match was WrestleMania 26 in Arizona when he lost to The Undertaker. So I'm going to ask you, some of these same people, The Undertakers of the world, Kane, Triple H, what are their last matches in your eyes? What is their like symbolic career finishers to you?
Well, I'll just sum it up just with one particular one because there are so many options between all the names you mentioned. For me, the one that I feel like was the true finish to a career, even though this individual kept wrestling for another 15 years later, just about, and that's Ric Flair, Shawn Michaels, WrestleMania. I believe it was 24 back in 2008. So It's been 15, 16 years now. That to me was the best way to go out, and I'll never forget it because I can still see it in my head right now as we're talking, where you see Shawn Michaels, he's in the corner getting ready to tune up the band for the sweet chin music, and you see Ric Flair like trying to fight, kind of a thing, like come on, like fight me, and then Shawn Michaels, it's like putting somebody somebody out of their misery or something out of its misery, so to speak, and saying, I'm sorry, I love you. Boom. Kick to the mush. 1, 2, 3. That's it. Out of all of those, all the guys you mentioned, that was for me the best. The other ones I just, they've been watered down so much. Wrestling as a whole, you never can say never because Ric Flair was wrestling in 2022. So like it's one of those things where it's like if you would have asked me watching Nitro, back in '99, oh yeah, Ric Flair, is he going to be wrestling in like another quarter century? I'd laugh and say, not a freaking chance. He won't be anywhere near a ring. Guess what? He has.
So, and that's why I make this topic here to kind of put into perspective, in the sense of not putting any due pressure on Sting. Sting heading into his last match at AEW Revolution, and as a fan, a way to kind of look at it and enjoy it and not, wonder and question, is to just look at it as this is his last match. This is the match he's choosing to be his last match. This is a pay-per-view and where they're hyping up his last match. So if Sting gets in the ring next summer in the WWE and a chance to go up against The Undertaker at WrestleMania or something like that, once in a lifetime deal that he wants to complete on his bucket list, I'm not going to be upset. I'm not going to look at, him as a liar. I'm not going to look at this as a fraud. I'm going to look at it like that was your last match. This is your post-retirement. And one of those ones, and it gets kind of murky with somebody like Kane. I'm looking at, his history. I'm going to say his match against the Bludgeon Brothers for the tag team championships and where he teamed with Daniel Bryan at Extreme Rules 2018. I'm going to look at that as his last match, even though afterwards he wrestled with Kane, with The Undertaker against DX in Saudi Arabia.
That match sucked.
And then in the Thunderdome, he appeared in the Royal Rumble, right? Those things happened after that match.
Doesn't count.
Exactly. So I'm going to look at that as his last match. And with
the
Undertaker,
Brothers, man, that kind of gives me pause. Rest in peace to Luke Harper, Brody Lee. That's just that. Every time I hear that name, Bludgeon Brothers, I have to pause for a second because it's like, it's been a few years since we lost Brody, so it's and I think you're right with the whole Kane thing. I think that was his last match in his retirement.
His last storyline.
Yeah,
you gotta look at and it's your last storyline. It's your last. You're a regular kind of thing. And here's one, right? So The Undertaker, right? That's a lot of people look at the Boneyard match at WrestleMania 36 is his last match. Yeah. The last match that he wrestled in the United States in front of people was a the tag team match where he teamed up with Roman Reigns at Extreme Rules 2019 against Drew McIntyre and Shane McMahon in the summer of 2019.
What's his last singles match though? That was in front of in front of a live audience. What was?
Well, you don't want to count that against Goldberg.
Yes. No.
Yeah. I mean, he also appeared right before the pandemic, winning that trophy gauntlet where he beat AJ Styles, Andrade, Bobby Lashley, Eric Rowan, and R-Truth in Saudi Arabia. But here's what I'm going to say, right? This to me is his last match, and it's not Triple H versus The Undertaker at Super Showdown in Australia, where they were hyping up. What was that? I think it was like the end of the road or something like that. And even you can go back to the end of the road that they called his Hell in a Cell match with Triple H in Miami at WrestleMania. Not doing any of those. Undertaker versus Roman Reigns, WrestleMania 33, the main event. Streak's over, no titles on the line. Undertaker loses to Roman Reigns, the main event of WrestleMania 33. He puts his boots and his coat in the ring, and the show goes off with him going, down into the set, essentially. In my eyes, that's Undertaker's last match. Everything after that has just been kind of a money grab. Right, he's had a few of them. Right? The Undertaker, John Cena at WrestleMania the following year, right?
That's fair, but I think the whole setup of that Boneyard match with AJ Styles, because he is the Undertaker. I think to me that's my lasting match. My retirement match for Undertaker. I get it was certainly a money grab. But I feel like that was just I felt like
everything. Whether even if AJ Styles and the Undertaker wrestled in front of a crowd at WrestleMania 36. I still wouldn't necessarily deem that the finish of his career.
I do, because he's riding off in the sunset, or he's riding off in the darkness because he's the dark characters. So he's getting on the motorcycle and he's just that to me that's a lasting image for me. I guess I differ with you on that. I mean, I can see what you mean with the Roman Reigns part, but I think that Boneyard match, I feel like it was good for what it was, that cinematic style. I think that was a good way to protect Undertaker at that point, and also put on a decent show for the fans. I thought it was cool. It's different. It's a different way to go out, but from a cinematic and just that whole image of him just kind of riding off into the darkness, like his motorcycle. That to me that symbolizes Undertaker. on his last ride.
A few more picks. I'm going to pick, when it comes to Goldberg, I'm going to pick him losing to Brock Lesnar at that same WrestleMania 33. He came in as the champion. He lost to Brock Lesnar at WrestleMania 33 after winning the title a month earlier against Kevin Owens. I'm going to look at that as last match because after that, he took on Dolph Ziggler at one of the Summer Slams. He took on Undertaker, and obviously we talk about that. He defeated The Fiend, which was really something that nobody wanted to see, only just to drop the belt to Braun Strowman the next month. Then at the Royal Rumble in 2021, he came back just to lose to Drew McIntyre. He lost to Bobby Lashley at SummerSlam 2021. I was at that one. I don't even remember the storyline necessarily with that, and I was even there. He then beats Bobby Lashley in Saudi Arabia a month later, right? And then even since then, Elimination Chamber 2022 in Saudi Arabia, lost to Roman Reigns. So a lot of Saudi Arabia appearances since then. I'm going to look at, he came back in 2016 to WWE after the long absence, beat Brock Lesnar in that, multi-second win that nobody saw coming, right? Did the run where he showed up in the Rumble, won the belt, did like an actual little bit of a run. And then when he lost it, he went away for 2 years. And I think that's the end of Goldberg for me. What about you?
No, it's not. You mentioned it, that long layoff. 2004, Stone Cold Steve Austin was the referee. It was an Bill Goldberg fashion because he was not known as a long time worker in the ring. Like pretty much like he hits his moves, he overpowers, and he's out of the ring. A 13-minute and 48-second match against Brock Lesnar. Again, where Stone Cold Steve Austin was the referee.
That's a difficult one because everyone hated that match. Everyone hated that match because Brock was going off to the NFL. Goldberg.
I don't care if they hated the match or not. I'm just speaking facts. That to me was the last match where he looked like he belonged in the ring. Because, and no disrespect to Bill Goldberg, anything after 2004, he should have never wrestled again. Because that one spot where he almost broke Undertaker's neck, like that was one of those things where like he shouldn't have been in there. He should not have been wrestling after 2004. That's just me. So that's why I say that match to me was like that swan song, because it was a 13-minute and almost 14-minute match, and he's not known for that. So I would say that's the match. And it was at Madison Square Garden, too.
One final one we'll do in this segment here, and I'll do what I think is Triple H and Batista. I think it's their last match, WrestleMania 35. Triple H actually beat Batista at WrestleMania 35 in 25 minutes. But since then, Randy Orton took on Triple H in Saudi Arabia. Triple H was with the Club. AJ Styles, Carl Anderson, and Luke Gallows against Bobby Lashley and Samoa Joe at a house show in Tokyo, Japan. And then he wrestled with Shinsuke Nakamura in a house show in Japan against Robert Roode and Samoa Joe. But I'm going to say Triple H Batista, WrestleMania 35. That's his last match. And that's even post the DX reunion. But I guess I got to go with that. He doesn't really have more of that definitive one, but
he really doesn't. I mean, just looking through the matches in his career, yeah. I mean, I honestly could go back. I could go back to 2016 where Roman Reigns defeats him
at WrestleMania. Yeah,
yeah,
and he had the run with the belt. Yeah, I mean,
that's what I would say. It's 2016. That was in Dallas. I think that if I had to pick one that's kind of definitive, that's probably the one I go with. If I had to pick one.
And you know what? There might be some validity to that because it was in Dallas, in that same ring, in that same stadium, that he kicked off WrestleMania by putting his boots in the ring. So maybe that's some symbolism there for Triple H to say his last appearance was in Dallas, Texas, at AT&T Stadium. But the point of all this is if Triple H gets back in the ring, which believe me, I don't think is something that's out of the realm of possibility. If The Rock gets back in the ring, which he's clearly going to do. If Stone Cold Steve Austin gets back in the ring, which he did against Kevin Owens. If any of those people do any of those things, the way that you can just look at it is simply they had their last matches, their retirements, and these are just post-retirement things.
I'm gonna cut you off real quick. Triple H, with his heart issues and everything, obviously he was out of the limelight for a bit. I think because of that condition with his heart, I don't think he ever wrestles again.
Well, maybe he's a little bit smarter as well, because I'd say that means nothing to Ric Flair.
No, that is true, because Ric Flair has been knocking on that door, so to speak, and he still keeps going. But Triple H, I think, ever since all his health issues that he did have, and he took an absence from the business. I feel like from there, and now they're presenting him as Paul Triple H Levesque. I feel like to me, he's the guy with the coat now. I don't think he does the ring anything in the ring anymore.
But you got a lot of guys, and you're always going to wonder what was their last match, if they really went out. Sting, I mean, it's to finish off with Sting, perfect way for him to go out in his career. And if he wrestles again, if he shows up in a tag team match, if he shows up in the Royal Rumble, does anything like that, it doesn't taint his last match, which will be in Greensboro, North Carolina on March the 3rd.